Hello, and welcome to this week's episode of Art Like Everything Else, the podcast where we use art to talk about literally everything else. I'm your host, Mo, and this week we're going to be talking a bit about courage, a bit about fear, and a bit about what that actually looks like. And to do that, I'm actually going to be using two characters, each from a different work of art, so let's get right into it. Alrighty, so for our first work of art, the character I will be choosing is from none other than the show One Piece. Are we surprised?
Surprise,
Are we
surprise.
surprised? So, One Piece is, as I've talked about it before during this podcast, is definitely one of my favorite animes. In fact, it's definitely in the top five. It's actually definitely in my top three. I would say it's the only anime it's possibly up against is Mob Psycho 100. And even then, it's really a toss up. So it's in top two, and there's so much that you can learn and kind of gain from watching this show. And it's definitely a really cool piece to reflect on. And so for today's episode, if you watch the show One Piece, you probably already know who I'm going to be talking about, given the conversation is about courage and bravery and fear. And if you do not know, I am going to be talking about none other than Usopp. And so Usopp is the sniper on the crew. He joined the Straw Hats crew fourth. Actually, rewind for those who may have never watched the show One Piece. Brief history: it is a really long running manga and anime. The anime first released in 1999 and it is still ongoing. It's over 1,000 episodes at this point. I do highly recommend watching every episode if you're up to it. However, I do understand if you're not up to it. But it is an anime with by far some of my favorite world building, and it is really entertaining throughout. And there's so much to watch and have fun with and enjoy, and I would recommend it. But I also understand it is over 1,000 episodes long, and some people have lives. So yeah, watch it if you can, but if you don't, at least enjoy the content online because it's really fun. But that being said, I'm going to be talking about Usopp. So Usopp is actually the sniper of the crew, and so well, he's like a sniper. He also works on the ship. He's also like an inventor, and he does all of these really really cool things. And not only does he do those cool things, he's actually like a master marksman. So it's like, and especially in the show. So for those who do watch the show and probably read the manga, I am talking explicitly about the show. Um, and I am not 100% caught up. So like, no spoilers in the comments, please. But in the show, like, there's a like he's known to be like a master marksman. Like he uses a slingshot and he's whatever he like targets, whatever he sets his eyes on, he's able to hit with his slingshot and or with whatever he sort of creation he's created to try to target something. He's a master marksman. He always hits it. He's like an engineer. He's always fixing things on the boat or helping to fix things on the boat. He's creating gadgets and things for his crew members. He's doing all of these cool things. He knows he's like tactical and he's known to be pretty smart. He's also, while he's not like the strongest member on the crew, his skill is recognized by every single person on that crew, including his captain, who is literally has probably one among the highest bounties because he's wanted by everybody. Like he's wanted by the world government. He's wanted by other powerful pirates because he's going after the thing that they want. And so there's all of this stuff happening. And Usopp is getting the accolades from all of these people. He's known to be great in all of these ways, and he is still so very afraid whenever a new fight comes up, whenever there's a new boss, whenever there's a new venture into doing something. And at the idea of having to fight, he he's among the first to cower away. And that was something that frustrated me for a very long time before I sort of sat and thought about it. But before I think about it and talk about some of the thoughts I've had, I want to talk about our other character. So let's get right into that character. For our next work of art, I'm going to be talking about a character from the show Friern Beyond Journey's End. Now, this show is another anime, but this one the show was released relatively recently, so it's released back in 2024. And while there is a character that I'm going to be talking about in this show, of course, I want to talk. He's actually not one of the main characters, so like in talking about him, there won't necessarily be too many spoilers if you do plan to watch the show. I've started watching it recently, and it's actually really, really fun. I'm enjoying it, and I also recommend that if you're someone who watches anime and enjoys things of that nature. It's very fun. It's cute. With that being said, the character I'm going to be talking about from this show is actually the character Eisen. So he's a dwarf, but he's also the warrior of the hero party. So this show follows almost the after adventure-ish life of Friern, which is of course the name of our main character. It's kind of following her on these adventures. And Eisen is a friend she made while she was during the hero's journey, which was about 10 years. He was the warrior on this crew for this hero troop to go and kill the Demon King. And so like because he's the warrior, he he was known to be incredibly strong, incredibly seen as incredibly reliable, and also like these are just some of his abilities. Superhuman durability, so like he could literally free fall from any height and be okay. It was ridiculous. He had superhuman strength, so and he was incredibly strong. He had superhero speed. He had superhuman reflexes. He had incredible poison resistance. Like there was nothing he could eat, and like he could eat literally anything and be pretty much okay. And he was really skilled with his axe. And he was seen as like almost this larger than life, more than capable warrior by everyone around him, by all the people who looked up to him and his skill. And yet, still, what I found fascinating was that before his battles, before he would go into a fight, especially up against someone or something that was seen to be relatively scary, but like doable because, of course, like he's superhuman in just about all aspects. He was afraid, and he would be seen sort of like shaking or trembling or have to like still himself in order to like get be prepared for the fight. And that was something I really found fascinating, being related to someone who was seen as like this unstoppable force. Because when we're learning about Eisen, we're hearing from his disciple who looks up to him, and from from the eyes of his friend, Frieren, who of course that's his friend, and she recognizes, and she was on this hero's journey with him, and so she recognizes and knows how powerful he is. But to see that he was still afraid in some of these aspects, despite all of this, I found incredibly fascinating. And I do want to talk about that. So let's have this conversation. Something that's actually really cool about both of these characters is that despite both of them having undeniable skill in their regarded field, so like with Usopp being a master marksman, and then Eisen being quite literally superhuman and having superhuman ability, strength. durability, speed, all of these things, all despite them having undeniable strength, whenever it came to battles, they were still terrified. They were still afraid about going into these events despite having all of this past history that you would think acts as proof that like they are more than capable of facing whatever it is ahead of them. And yet still they were terrified. And honestly, for a very long time, if I'm being honest, Usopp felt like the bane of my existence when I was watching One Piece. Like he's always been my least favorite character, and I had to kind of think of why. And so like for a lot of people who watch One Piece, it is the fact that he's a coward. Um but I don't like it's not just that for me. Like it wasn't the fact that he was a coward that annoyed me the most about him. It was the fact that he was a coward despite having skills and despite working really, really hard to get better, to be stronger, at least in relationship to himself as his own metric. Because to be, if he tried to use anyone else as a metric, of course he's not gonna sort of measure up. But like to get stronger, to become more skilled in what it is he's doing, to find his own specialties, and to be seen and recognized as being amazing in those things, he still thought so very little of himself, or at least this is how it was going in my mind. Like he thought so little of himself that he was still afraid to even attempt at going up against these people. To He was afraid to even like initially sort of stand up for what it was he knew was the right thing to do. And that frustrated me, and it made me dislike him for a very, very long time. And then I sort of thought about it and I was just like, maybe, just maybe, I am more like Usopp than I thought. In that, like, I think what frustrated me the most about seeing him do was recognizing that I do something similar in my own life, and that, like, there are things that people have told me I'm good at, that people have been like, oh, yeah, that would be really, really cool. I'd like to see you be able to do that. Having the people in my corner who was like, hey, you can do this. You're amazing. And then also knowing that like, hey, I'm capable. I know I have these skills. I know I can do these things. And then also like even learning new things so that I can better be a better person to pursue those things. I'm still scared to do those things. And so I think some like in reflecting on this, I was just like, maybe I'm not liking that he is not able to show up despite all the skill and the people in his corner, because I'm seeing that aspect in myself, and that like I do not like that I don't feel like I'm able to show up for myself despite all of these things that I know I'm capable of. But of course, I allowed some of the cognitive dissonance, at least for a little bit. And also because, like, my dislike of Usopp ran deeper than that, too. So it was just like, there was other things that happened in the show that I find annoying about his character, which doesn't make him a bad character or a bad person. He's just well written to the point where I'm like, I don't like you, that like that at least. But that brings me to Eisen. So as I was watching Friern and seeing all of these stories, especially because how it built up to like what sparked this the idea for this episode, actually it was the introduction of his his disciple to Frieren and Frieren's team. And she's talking about how amazing he is, how incredibly strong he is, how incredibly reliable he was, how people looked up to him, how like he's just almost like this larger than life person. And then we see his disciple who's also talking about how amazing he is, how incredible he is, how he feels like he could never live up to his like his stature, his idea, like the very idea of him, because again, like he was on the heroes team to help defeat the Demon King. Like he's this larger than life, almost almost godlike figure, not necessarily godlike, but like essentially he's idolized by his disciple, and his disciples talking him up. And then Friern is also like, yeah, no, he really was a great warrior. And we see Eisen, and Eisen, spoiler alert, but Eisen is talking about how he was incredibly afraid, and like you could see like he was shaking before like the fight he had just gotten into. And it sort of clicked for me. It was like, oh, so maybe it doesn't matter how prepared or how strong or how capable you are before something happens. What matters is that whether or not you actually kind of go forward with it. And so that brings me to the definition of courage, which honestly I do recognize that um, the show, at least that's sort of like Usopp's arc. If you do get into One Piece, Usopp arc is about him becoming more brave. But the definition of courage, so according to Merriam-Webster, the definition is mental or moral strength to venture, persevere, and withstand danger, fear, or difficulty. And so this is really important because it is showing how maybe it is okay for me to be afraid in my pursuit to doing these things that do feel more or less larger than life for me, that do feel almost terrifying to confront, despite me having confronted and gone past all of the obstacles I've already gone past. Maybe it is okay to still be afraid of what's to come, because no matter how strong I am, no matter how big I get, I will still anticipate and be afraid of what I don't know. And I think what's really important, and it's something that Frieren actually sort of highlights in this episode as well, is that like sometimes you just have to do it. And so there's that picture or like that quote that goes around on the internet. I do not know who originally wrote it or made it, but the feel the fear and do it anyway. And that's essentially all courage is. It's being afraid, whether you let other people see it or not, but it's being afraid and choosing to keep going regardless. So, like, just like Eisen, he would not have become the warrior of the heroes party if he did not keep going forward and he did not actually pursue and go and actually attack and defend and protect the people he said he was going to protect, even if he was afraid of whatever big bad was right in front of him. Or like Usopp, who, even though he is a bit of a coward and he's very scary in the show, he still he always manages to at least knock out whatever big bad he was supposed to knock out. He always manages to help the team when they need help, even if he's quite literally shaking as he's doing it, because that's something that happens often too. It's like you can see him literally shaking as he's attempting to stand up for what he believes is right, and which is whatever he feels is right on the side of his captain. And so maybe it really does have me thinking, about my own journey and being and pursuing what it is that I want to pursue, and that maybe it is okay for me to be scared, and it is okay for me to be scared and to keep going despite that fear. And so maybe, just maybe, being afraid and doing it anyway, too, can be an art. An art like everything else. Last and certainly not least is this week's awe moment. Since I'm already talking about different anime characters, for this week's awe moment, I want to talk about the anime very quickly. Homie can't communicate. And so, something I've been thinking about a lot recently is how I've been thinking about the idea of fear and what fear can tell us. Because I feel like we so often do think of the aversion aspect of fear, but I've been trying to rethink fear to encourage myself to be less afraid, as I was kind of talking about in this episode. And I think I've been thinking about how like fear does also show us what it is that we actually want and what we do desire. And so we can kind of see that in the show Comey Can't Communicate. So Comey is a character with severe social anxiety to the point where like she physically cannot bring herself to speak. And we see her, this fear of her communicating and fear of getting close to people show up, but we know that it comes from her desire to be friends with people. And so I feel like fear works like that in a lot of different ways. So like you fear being seen because maybe because you do really want to be seen. You fear encountering danger because you like being alive. Like it makes sense. And so it's like in this case, Comey feared communicating. That fear of communicating showed that she really desires to be in community with other folks and other people. And I think it'd be really, really fascinating and really, really cool if we started to think more about what this fear that we may have is actually telling us and use that to sort of rewire how we navigate moving forward with whatever it is that we do desire or whatever it is that we are wanting or even wanting what we want to avoid, and like just give us time to reflect on why we want to avoid that. Like what is our fear of certain things telling us about ourselves. I think that's really, really cool, and honestly it's really important to self-reflect anyway. But that's actually all I have for today's episode. Thank you for being here. Please feel free to follow me on social media. So my personal, The Lovely Infinite, lovely without the vowels. It will be on the screen. But if you're only listening, that is TheLVLYINFINITE. And also feel free to follow the page for any updates in all other ventures. So that'll be Art Like Studios. And we also have a art collective, so feel free to join that and be a part of that and be in on the ground floor. And so that is the CMP Collective, the CMP Collective. And so that just CMP just stands for Creativity, Maintenance, and Preservation. That's all I have for you today. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being. I hope you have a great rest of your day. Bye.